Welcome to Own It, Your Business and Your Life, with Nicola Cairncross and Judith Morgan. In this podcast, we're going to cover everything you need to embrace to become a successful entrepreneur, marketing, money, and much, much more. How to create a business doing just what you love. How to own it, your business and your life. This one will be fast, funny, feisty, and very lively. So sit back and enjoy the show. I'm Nicola Cairncross and I'm an online entrepreneur. I've been working online for 20 years. Just over the last year, I've launched and made a success of my own podcast, The Business Success Factory, and I've got much more interest in the whole concept of podcasting. The thing I like about it most is you don't have to put any makeup on and do your hair before you get started, not like video. I've not just become obsessed with my own podcast, I've started to listen to lots of other podcasts. I suddenly realised one day that the podcasts I most enjoy listening to are those where there are two people having conversations with someone they know very well. Somehow it just flows. I started thinking about who I could start a new podcast with, where we could just have a conversation, have a laugh, talk about stuff that really interested us, and spark off each other, not always having the same opinion. Immediately, I thought of Judith Morgan. Judith's an ex-client. She became a business partner. We worked together in the money gym for about 4 or 5 years, and we had a great time. We've both subsequently built our own separate businesses, but we've kept in touch. I immediately got in touch with Judith and ran the idea past her. Hey Judith, how about we do a podcast together? We're going to start off this podcast by talking about 3 things that have happened to us this week. And the things that have happened to me this week that really stand out is I attended a follow-up Google Hangout for Rich Sheffrin's Entrepreneur Transformation Weekend. I went trotting off to Florida recently for a weekend. I've never gone that far for such a short period of time before. But it was really quite amazing. He worked us hard. It wasn't what I expected. I expected lots of down-to-earth business goal-setting stuff, but it was actually mostly all about the psychology of being an entrepreneur, and it had a deeply profound effect on me in that I thought I took 100% responsibility for my life, but I didn't realise how much I was still letting my feelings dictate my actions. And this weekend had an amazing effect on me, as I say, and we had this follow-up hangout, which was quite interesting in itself because Google Hangouts are still quite new. And he was joined by Dr. Emery, who is the psychologist and coach he's been working with. And it was just to find out how we were getting on with the things we decided we were going to do. And it was an interesting experience for me because I'd actually managed to do all the things I said I was going to do, bar the personal stuff, which I'm obviously still wrangling with somehow. One of the things I came out of there saying I was going to do was identifying the ideal client for cairncrossmedia.com, which is a Facebook and podcasting service agency I've got. And it's an interesting one, this, because identifying your ideal client for a new venture, I'm sure Judith will have a comment on this, is quite a challenging one. You can either look and see who your existing clients have been in past ventures, or indeed if you've already got some clients, you can look at which ones work and which ones are profitable and which ones you enjoy working with. And I do have some existing clients, so that does give me a guideline. But the other way is to just do something like throwing the digital equivalent of throwing mud at a wall, i.e. emailing 100 businesses at a time and just seeing who responds, really. So that's what I've been doing. And I had quite a lot of psychological issues with doing that. As you know, as someone who's always worked from within the confines of a mailing list, I felt quite hesitant. But the exercises that I did at Rich's weekend really helped me to identify, what was sort of coming up for me and enabled me to get over myself, if you like. The other thing that's happened this week was I did a launch webinar with a friend of mine, Andy Shaw, who's got a book called Bug Free Mind, which I highly recommend. And it was interesting because whenever I do webinars, I'm lucky if I get to 100 people on the call. But he announced this webinar and 4,500 people signed up immediately. And we knew that we could only get 1,000 on the call. So, we were sort of saying that we were going to do the recording. I was doing all the tech, by the way, because they're a bit rubbish with tech, that lot. The thing I was really struck by were the staggering numbers. And I've got an angel healer client who, again, staggering numbers on the Facebook ads and the likes on her page. It made me realise just how small the internet marketing and business marketing niche is compared with the personal development niche, which I suppose is something that Tony Robbins has known for a long time. So that's my week. Judith, what have you been up to?
Well, Nicola, my week has, actually my month of December 2014 has been dominated with helping my clients on the issue of the impending new rules for VAT. Now, as you know, I used to be an accountant ages ago, and I sold that business in 97, and I stopped doing accounting forever in 2007. But I do know enough about VAT to help my clients with this. And these rules that are coming in are nothing to do with us. We've all been caught up in it accidentally. They are targeted at the broadcast and telecommunications industries. And they're about making the UK fall in line with the EU. So it's not even that the UK wants to do this. We're being required to do it by the EU. And a lot of my clients have gone into a flat spin. It's all about digital products. And the HMRC definition of a digital product is an app. So you download it. And so I create an app, you, Nicola, buy it and download it. And from that moment onwards, it's entirely in your own hands. What the HMRC didn't realise, it was going to suck up a lot of people like you and me and people we know and all of our clients and people we've taught to create digital products. And so we're looking into the definition of what that means. So nice entrepreneurial workarounds while HMRC get their heads together with people spearheading campaigns. There's a lot of fear and a lot of politics and a lot of ranting, but not many people have read the fine print. You won't be surprised to hear that I have read the fine print. Oh. And I'm not really interested in the campaign. I'm interested in looking after my clients and making sure that they're compliant and making sure that they have a way to keep trading and protect their income until this all comes together nicely. So my week has been dominated by VAT, and I haven't chosen it because I don't relish that sort of thing anymore. But I do work with clients and their fears around creating a successful business, and that's been a big fear for all of us in December. So
yeah, it's all over Facebook.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is. It's a big campaign, and Twitter, and actually social media has been very useful in drawing attention to this from the powers that be to the tiniest of tiny micro entrepreneurs. Those are the people like us that have been sucked up in it.
Yeah.
And I think the other feature of December for me has been in the northern hemisphere, it's very dark and increasingly cold now, and so I'm a bit inclined to hibernate. I don't really want to get out of bed in the morning, even though I love my work. So what I notice is that my body clock shifts with that darkness. So now my working day might only start at 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning, but if it starts that late, it goes on much later in the evening. So last night I didn't finish till 8:30 at night. So it's just interesting. You can stand in the kitchen and observe your working day changing like that. And the brilliant thing about being self-employed, of course, is that you can choose that.
Yeah.
And the other highlight of my week is last night I'm working at home diligently all by myself like I do every day, and the doorbell rings and nobody ever comes to see me. And it was a recent client who brought me some Christmas presents. So how exciting was that?
Oh, that's
me sitting at my desk. Well, she was very lucky that I was dressed and that the house was clean and tidy and that I was able to let her in. So that was quite fun. And she just came in for a cup of tea and brought me some Chrissy presents. So that's felt nice warm feeling in the second week of December there.
That's lovely. I had a similar experience, but not so pleasant, in that I was interviewing Jenny Amato. Do you remember Jenny?
I do.
Yeah, well, I was interviewing her for the podcast, and halfway through I had to break off because there was a bloke with a ladder in my back garden climbing onto my half roof, the kitchen extension, and about to come into my bathroom window by the looks of it.
Oh, what, do you mean like a burglar?
No, well, that's what I thought it was, obviously, but it turned out to be the window cleaner I hired 6 months ago, who's never been back since. He just popped up thinking he'd probably make himself a quick few bob for Christmas, and expected everyone to be in with a tenner and recognise him.
Well, I have unplugged the phone, but the doorbell's gone a lot today, so we might have interruptions like that today, I guess.
Well, I also, my cleaner's about to arrive, as you know, and Steve Watson bought me the loudest Hoover on the planet for my 50th birthday, so we'll have to break off.
Gotta take it on my way.
So, Judith, what's our client challenge of the week then?
Well, I thought it would be a good idea to talk about clutter.
Oh, very good.
Because it does seem to be everybody's challenge in the entire world except mine.
Well, I'm better at it, I've got to say, but I've had to work at it.
Yeah, I am very, very minimalist.
Yes.
And I don't really have any things. But everybody, it seems to me, has got too much stuff. And if you work at home, or actually even if you don't work at home, this is digital clutter as well as every other sort of clutter. So if we start with digital clutter, for instance, does your computer need a tidy up? Do you know Denise Duffield-Thomas? I think you've interviewed her recently, haven't you?
She's actually my Christmas Day or New Year guest on my podcast.
Oh, marvellous. Because she's got this thing going on right now called Yule Tidy. Like Yuletide. Yule Tidy. Yeah, very nice. But one of the so if you have a look at her Facebook memes, one of the things was about tidying up your computer. So not just cleaning it, but, putting everything in a file and getting rid of stuff you didn't need and moving off data you never use and all that kind of thing. And I thought that was quite a good idea. But, some of my clients have got so much stuff that they can't think clearly. They can't make a decision. They can't see. They can't breathe. They can't move. And whilst they're getting up the energy and the strategy to deal with the clutter they've got, more is coming in and the problem never gets better.
Yeah.
I don't understand, Nicola, help me understand. I don't understand why people do this. I think it's about feeling safe. I don't know. And obviously it's very easy for me because I don't have children, and I think children bring a lot of clutter into people's worlds. But how do people get themselves in such a mess with digital and physical stuff?
Well, you're talking to the woman who has learnt to overcome this. I mean, I'm on a mission to not be dependent on any one computer. So I've been busily, moving everything into the cloud, either by, so old stuff goes into Dropbox and recent stuff and documents is in Google Drive.
Yes.
So I've now got a discipline where I'm not allowed to save anything to my computer. It has to go into one or other of those places from the download thing.
Yeah.
But I am a bit compulsive about keeping stuff. But as long as it's kept somewhere out of sight, I don't feel constrained by it. On a physical level, I remember when the kids were young, I did get awfully overwhelmed sometimes by even simple things like sorting out the washing. Until I learned the halving trick. Now, this was not Martin Avis.
I know who you mean. Do you mean Mark Forster?
I do mean Mark Forster, bless him.
Yeah.
He taught us the halving thing, which is when you've got a big pile of stuff to sort out, just only ever sort it into two piles. So, for example, with the kids' washing, with the washing in the house, I used to sort it out into grown-ups and children. And then I used to take the children's pile and sort it into Phoebe and Nelson. And then I would take Nelson's pile and sort it into underwear and outerwear. And that enabled me then to sort the washing, take it all upstairs, and then put it straight into their drawers. Yeah. But before that, I used to look at the pile of washing and think, oh, my God, I can't cope.
Yeah.
But I have had clients who've come on coaching calls week after week and said, I can't do that until I sort this out.
I know. And this is what I'm saying. I think that, this is why I brought it up. I think that clutter is the biggest barrier I see to anybody being able to do anything effectively.
I totally agree. Although I am looking at my desk right now and it has got a pile of books, a picture, a telephone, and underneath my computer it's on a little stand so that it's ergonomically better for me. But there is a bit of clutter appearing under there. But I do regularly have a purge.
Yeah,
Like
I think that's the key. And I think that what I've realised is most of my clients need some support with this, and the support might need to be emotional, because people attach a lot of feelings to stuff.
Oh yes.
So either you swap it with a friend or you get a professional round, quite frankly, because I really think it's a big threat. That overwhelm is a big threat to our clients being able to create a business.
I totally agree, and I totally also agree with the feelings. One of the things, I went on that Rich Sheffron weekend. One of the things that came out of it for me very strongly was that humans are meaning-making machines. We attach meaning to all sorts of things where there isn't any, and that meaning always comes from things that have happened to us in our past. So where I look at books, I still struggle with books, right? I've got a big cupboard full of books. I have got rid of all the rubbish, like the novels and things, the detective novels we're both so fond of.
Yes.
But I've kept every single success, wealth creation, personal development, business success book, and I paid Phoebe to sort them all out and put them into sections for me, because it made me feel overwhelmed looking at them all in they're all in a cupboard, but they're all jumbled up. But when I paid Phoebe £5 an hour to sort them all out for me, it took her a whole afternoon, but she was able to do it because she was able to say, what is this, business, wealth creation, or success? And
let me ask you a question, Nicola. Yeah, let me ask you a question. Why do you still buy physical books?
I actually prefer still reading physical books. I've got a Kindle app on my iPad, and I am occasionally, when the instant gratification thing comes upon me and I want a book right now, I will do it. But I always regret it, because I always think nobody else is ever going to be able to read that book. And in a way, I think I'm storing up a library of success and wealth creation for my kids. I think if when I go, hopefully I'll leave them some money and a bit, perhaps a property, but also I want to leave them the books, because the books are the things that changed my life most dramatically. They'll probably never read them, Judith, but at least they'll have the choice. Whereas if they're on my Kindle, if they're on the Kindle, they have no choice.
Maybe not. Maybe you could leave them a Kindle.
Yeah, but it's not the same. It's like,
it is the same, darling. It is the same, because what's important to both of us is the knowledge inside. Here's a tip. Just think, it's a shame you're not going to die for another 50 years. It's a shame that knowledge isn't, give some of them away now. Honestly, pay it forward. Keep the ones you are going to read again, or the ones that are really important. Now, Jane, my aromatherapist, has got a good thing. She does a cull. You go along the shelves and you go, I'm going to get rid of 1 in 10. Or 1 in 5, or 1 in 20, or 1 in 2, doesn't matter. You just decide that number and you pay them forward. You give them away to other people, or you can sell them. You can raffle them. You can use them. I send them to clients, you see. So they're talking to me about some particular dilemma, and I go, oh, just let me reach for a chubby bag and post this one to you. When somebody sends me a book and I've read it or haven't read it, I pay it forward.
But I just recently, Phoebe's just been talking to me recently, because she's saving half of her income from the pub, and she's built up, and she's got, she's built up quite a big stash of cash, and it's only going to get larger. And I said to her, "Are you ready to read Rich Dad Poor Dad now?" And she said, "Yes, I think I am." Because I've been trying to get them to read it since they're about 14, and she's 14 now. And I went to my cupboard, and I've got every bloody Rich Dad book in the world, but not the first one. Oh. So I've obviously sent that and given it away to someone, and they've never probably read it, and now I don't have it for my daughter, and I have to order it again. So
that's how Clutter works. Yeah, it works because I'm saving it in case
I might need it one day.
Yes. Yeah,
and I've attached lots of meaning to these books, haven't I? Whereas they're just books.
Yeah,
emotional meaning, which is affecting my behaviour.
I am very happy for you to keep any that you will read again.
Well, I never read books twice.
I rest my case.
It's like I can't watch films twice either. But I don't.
Oh, I can. I do. I can reread. There's a book that I particularly love by Bill Bryson that I will reread every holiday. And I did watch Love Actually again this week. I can read and watch things again.
I'm going to say Love Actually is one film I could watch over and over again.
There you go. There you go.
Well, there we go.
Clutter, there you go. So topic of the week, clutter. You've got to find strategies to move it on. Otherwise, it closes in on you. You can't breathe. You can't think. You can't take a decision. You can't do anything. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it does stop you taking action when you've got in the back of your head, I've got to do that first before I could do this.
Yeah, it shuts down all our abilities to do anything efficiently or clearly. We've got this thing. It's like something on our back that's getting bigger and heavier all the time. I've got to do something about that. I've got to do something about that. It's really debilitating.
Did you see the thing going past on Facebook this week about creativity? And it had an artist sitting in the middle of the most messy, filthy, cluttered studio I've ever come across, and it was from an article that apparently proves that creative people need clutter and mess around them to fuel their creativity. I totally disagree. I can only create when things are tidy and clean and empty.
I did see it, and I had exactly the same reaction as you. I don't know a person more creative in their thinking than me, and I don't have an ounce of clutter anywhere. End of.
And I think it ties into that thing about if you want good things to come into your life, you have to make space for them. Well, if we want to make that, you have to make space for it.
I think one tip, and you can do this with email clutter and you can do it with physical clutter, is if you bring something new in, something else has to go.
Yeah. And don't
Christmas we're coming up to. People are going to bring all this shit into their houses for Christmas without clearing the unwanted shit from Christmases previous.
I think what we're going to do now is we're going to declare this podcast explicit so that we can actually use whatever language we like, because we are already verging on
Sorry, Nicholas, I shouldn't have said shit. Is that what you're saying?
Well, some people do get. No, I think we should just go for it and label this podcast explicit. Then we won't upset anyone.
Okay, all right. I won't take that as carte blanche to be rude. There's no need to be rude, but
No.
I honestly think that clutter is the S word.
I do, yes, I totally agree with you. And on the email front, the new Gmail thing where it sorts things into tabs is anathema for internet marketers like myself, but it is a wonderful way of keeping all the rubbish out of your main inbox. And you can just go in to your social and your promotions and your updates. Obviously, don't do this with Judith or my emails. Drag us into the primary tab first and make sure that it says, do you want this to happen next time? Yes, I want them always to go into the primary tab. And then you could just go into all the other tabs and you can just click to select them all and delete them. And it's a marvellous, marvellous feeling.
Well, you can ring fence the 5,000 you haven't read in a file marked December 2014. And if you ever need to go in there and look in it, great. But if it's there this time next year, delete with impunity.
And that's a great tip. And the other one is the one that, again, I think it was Mark Forster that taught us this one, where you take everything. If you really can't bring yourself to throw things away, just put everything, all the clutter, into a cardboard box, label it the date, the month and the year, and put it in your garage. And if you haven't opened it for a year, you can happily throw it away next year without even looking in it.
That is a marvellous clutter clearing tip, yes. Black sacks labelled up with, the date. And if you haven't been in it for 6 months, take it to the charity shop, yes.
I'm reminded of our 5 skips when we left the Acacia. You try clutter clearing a 12-bedroom hotel, that's quite a job.
Well, I do think, actually, I've got a lot of middle-aged clients, and I know I did this for my parents as well. When people move down from the big house to a smaller house when they're retiring, it is quite difficult for them to let go of a lifetime full of the possessions. So you end up as the children helping with that and often taking a lot of that home only to throw that out later. It can be a 2-stage thing.
Moving the problem on, that's called.
Well, there's the feelings again, isn't it? It's the feelings. My best friend lost her father recently and is filling up her flat, which was already deeply overcrowded, with lots more stuff.
Yeah, my friend Kim has just moved from Shore and Beach and they're in between houses, so they've moved into her partner's luxury pad on the marina. She says it's like living in a boutique hotel, but her children are suffering quite strongly from the dislocation feeling, even though they both live in London and have their own clutter around them.
Yeah.
So it's a challenging one, but one that's got to be overcome if one wants to be successful.
I definitely think moving house is a great opportunity. My brother recently built his own house and in so doing moved from one house to another to another to another. And each of those opportunities was a chance to get rid of more stuff.
See, I'm a great believer in the take it all with you, and as you unpack it, throw it away.
Oh no, my brother. My brother's. I think my brother's favourite. He's just like me. His favourite place is the refuse tip.
Oh, weekly trips. Well,
Yes.
we'll come to an end on this one because
All right.
that's quite enough on the subject of clutter, but I think it's been helpful.
Marvellous. So,
Yeah.
Nicola, what's your word of the week?
My word of the week is urgency, Judith, because I've just come off a call with a mutual friend of ours, Suzanne Jorgensen, who nearly qualified for my Who or What's Impressed section, I must say, because, as you know, last Christmas Eve she was diagnosed with breast cancer. She had 4 lumps in her bosoms, and she has been a year through the whole thing, and she's been very, very inspirational through that. But, trying to go to the gym in between treatment and just generally, her hair's all came out, and she had to go to her daughter's wedding through all that, and her hair's now grown back in a really amazing salt and pepper grey with white in it, and it's just incredible to look at her. She's I know it sounds incredible to say that, but she glows with health when you look at her.
I think her new hair is gorgeous. If you're
I
talking
love
to her,
it.
you can tell her that from me. Gorgeous.
Yeah, new hair and new tits. What's not to like? But the thing that really I want to share with you about her today is that she popped up on Skype and said, I've had this new idea, because she's been looking for what to do after a treatment and get a new business going. She's a qualified psychiatrist. She's a qualified coach. She used to work with singles in the singles gym, but she's just had this new idea for a new business, which I liked enormously. And I always tell her straight when I don't like them. And she said she's got this sense of urgency that we both have, about getting things done, getting it moving, getting it in front of people to see if it resonates with them. And she's flying back to the UK on Monday night, but I gave her a great long list of things to do, and she's popped up and said, "Oh, I've done all that. Can we talk?" So I love that, the sense of urgency, and I think that's really, really important if you have a great idea. Many great ideas have been strangled by the lack of urgency.
I also think that what she's been through might give you a special perspective on that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but she never mentions that. She just gets on, cracks on. It was awesome and awe-inspiring.
Yeah.
What's your word then?
Oh, my word of the week is listen. It's listen, and this is a good word for both of us actually, because we yak and yak and yak and yak, you and I. And they do say that what we should do when we're working with our clients is to you've got one mouth and 2 ears, use them in those proportion. And it's difficult for us because we're teaching people. We're not really coaches. I'm teaching people how to build a business, and you're teaching them how to do digital marketing things online. And they come to us because they want what we know. Yeah. But sometimes the most valuable moments for me in life and in my work are when I listen more. So to create space for people to talk without necessarily feeling I need to fix them or solve it or ram my ideas down their throat or anything like that. And I think actually, funnily enough, good for us to be discussing this at Christmas time as well, because that may be a gift that we could give to somebody who doesn't get heard very often. I don't think very many people are heard. We're all waiting to talk next and show off what we want to say, and we're desperate to pitch in. But actually, let's listen more. That's a New Year's resolution, perhaps.
Well, you had a great promotion just before Christmas. Sorry about the clattering of the crockery in the background. My lovely cleaner is here. You had a listening vouchers. Give people the gift of a listening voucher, so you could give them a good listen to. I loved that.
Yeah. I've been doing that. I've been experimenting with that a lot over the years, and they learn a lot when they're talking. And all I have to do for them to do that is listen to them and be with them. And I love that.
And when I'm working with someone, that's why I prefer, the whole thing of doing it on a Skype, because if I don't even want to do video Skype, generally speaking. I'll do it for meetings when it's not about listening to them. But I find if I'm visually distracted by anything, I can't concentrate so well because I'm such a visual person. And when I do
we're twin souls. I make them turn the video off. I don't want to look at them. I want to hear them.
Yeah. And you can, when I'm doing the podcast interviews, it's astonishing because what I do is I have a picture of them up. So, in their bio, which is what I read out at the beginning. But then when they say something sometimes, and you can listen, when you listen to podcasts, you can hear it happening, or radio shows, I suppose. When someone says something and the energy just completely changes, and you have to be listening really hard so that you don't miss those moments, because they're the magical moments when people share something really special with you.
I totally agree, and also that whether one's a good, podcast host or an interviewer on the television or on the radio or anything, the best questions come out of what the person's just said, not the question that you've prepared in advance to ask them.
Yeah, very much so. And I've got my 100th episode coming up, and Rich Sheffrin's my guest on that. There couldn't be anyone else, could there, really? And I interviewed him, and I had to throw the agenda out the window because he was just sharing such amazing stories that I couldn't fit to my usual agenda. But I just decided, oh, that's perfect, just the way it is, and just went with it and really enjoyed it.
Lovely.
Last week, my guest kept talking about her son who died. And I realised after a little while that she wasn't saying his name, so I just asked her what his name was, and the whole interview just changed at that moment, and it became very much a celebration of his life after that, which was really nice.
And actually, now that I think about it, this concept of listening and listening to you describe that, a new role for you, actually, asking questions in the podcasting sense. And of course, we've got to bear in mind our listeners, haven't we? So I think this whole area of audio and interviews and podcasting is about listening. We must bear the listener in mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Gotta take it on my way.
So what's fueled your fire this week, Judith?
The thing I'm always looking for with this, Nicola, is what keeps my passion alive about my own business. I suppose client breakthroughs is one of those, where you know that the work that you're doing makes a difference. And Rich Dad Poor Dad, which you introduced me to, which teaches people about money, which is a large part of my work. He also has a game called Cash Flow 101, and as you know, I run that here regularly. And recently a client, somebody you know, called Sarah, I won't mention who she is, but she came and she played the game, and she was very anxious. She hired me because she wanted to get to grips with money. And she came to the game, she was very anxious in the morning, she didn't like it at all, she was resistant, she was defensive, she made a joke, she didn't want to make decisions, she wasn't happy at all. But during the course of the day, she really got it. It's quite useful. She's got a very youthful approach to life. It's quite useful for her that I was teaching her about money in a game. And what was really memorable for me was looking at her physiology. In the morning, she was a sort of nervous, uncomfortable person. In the afternoon, she was a relaxed, grown-up, laid-back, confident businesswoman. And to see that change in somebody's body in one business day, and for her now to be excited about her sums and emailing me spreadsheets, is phenomenal.
That's awesome, isn't it?
Yeah.
I love the game. I don't get to play it often enough, but that's really quite amazing.
Yeah.
For me, it's probably going to often be books for me, because I like to read. I've come across an amazing book called Predictable Revenue, which has shot straight into my top 20 books of all time. And what it reminded me of, apart from the fact it's a really good story, it's written by the bloke who built Salesforce, which is a software as a system, to phenomenal levels. And so there's a good story in there as well. But he's got a nice little system which anyone, I think, can take and turn into something they can use to make sure they're predictably doing the things that will bring the money in. You're either doing your service or product, or you're selling your service or product, or marketing it, in fact. And I think the thing that really struck me about it was how slack all of us internet marketer types are about nurturing our leads, because people come and they opt in all day long at the website, and we're rather casual about those leads that a normal real world business would be taking very seriously and looking after very, very gently and carefully. So I think for me, that's been something that's really bolted on to my existing skills and knowledge with. And in fact, I mentioned it to one of my clients, Facebook ads client, but he's got a wonderful, wonderful follow-up funnel for people who opt in at his website, which include all the, traditional things like follow-up emails and giving value and, before asking for the sale or anything like that. But the one thing that he was struggling with a little bit, and I'm sure you won't mind me saying this, is that that's the age-old thing of not many people turning up to the webinar. People were registering for his webinar, but then not many of them are turning up. And I said to him, why don't I opt in and see how it seems to me as a potential future client, how the whole thing works for me. And one of the things we noticed was that it all felt a little bit impersonal. It was really, really well written and professional and everything, but it just felt a little bit impersonal. And so he said to me, I know what I'm going to do. Every single person that opts in, I'm going to send them a personal note. And
nice.
I thought, wow, okay. So now theoretically you could put a personal note into your sequence, so it looks like it is a personal note. But he actually started engaging with his new leads, and it's had a tremendous impact from something like the usual 20 or 30% turn up rate to the webinar. He's getting a 90% turn up rate now, just because he's engaging with people. And that's a direct result of me learning from predictable revenue that each lead is precious and should be nurtured accordingly.
I certainly like the idea of paying individual attention to somebody as they opt in. I think that's a very nice idea.
Yeah, it doesn't take much either. It just takes a personal note from a different email. That's the trick. He was sending it from a different email to the one his regular emails went out from, and it was obviously quite personal that he was sending it. So that's an easy thing we can do, I think, unless you're getting thousands of leads a week, of course.
Yeah. Shall I ask you?
Yes, go on.
Right. Nicola, who or what has impressed you this week?
Well, it's a person, Judith, and he's called Dan Norris. And he is the chap who wrote a book called The 7-Day Startup, which is really pretty marvellous. And I think it's probably the must-read book after eMyth Revisited and eMyth Manager for new businesses. Inspirational because he worked for 7 years trying to get a startup business off the ground. He's in software, but it's irrelevant what he does because, anyway, 7 years. And he was a week away from having to go and get a job because he had a wife and a small child. And he tells that story very honestly and inspirationally. Anyway, he had this idea to start something called WP Curve. I don't think it was even called that in the early days, but the genius, simple idea. Lots of people starting to use WordPress, lots of people paying website designers, lots of people then left out in the cold about what to do with their WordPress website. So he said, what if you could come and pay a small amount of money a month to be a member of a site where you could get unlimited lots of little jobs done on your WordPress website? And he was working very much on the 80-20 principle that most people wouldn't use it very often, but they'd pay, and then they'd use it occasionally, but some people would use it a lot. So he started this with just him, a simple website, very simple website, and one WordPress developer. And then he got a second WordPress developer because it was 24/7. They guaranteed to turn your jobs around within 1 or 2 days. It's $67 a month, which is affordable for anyone, really. Anyway, he went from zero on week one to within a couple of months, he was making something like $30,000 or $40,000 a month. It just spread like wildfire. It took off like crazy, and I found it very an inspirational story, the inspirational book. I interviewed him for my podcast. It's out now. You can go and listen to it. And but the thing that's impressed me most of all is how in demand he is, how famous he's becoming, but how charming and helpful he is. He was a joy to interview. Sarah says he's been a joy to talk to every time they've been fixing up the interview and the follow up and everything. And he shared and tweeted his podcast episode. So many people don't bother to do that, and it's so important for download numbers. And so he's impressed the hell out of me.
Very nice.
What about you?
I'm going to tell you the story of a client called Margaret who lives in a little place outside of Boulder, Colorado called Evergreen. And Margaret makes websites, beautiful websites, and she's got a particular political take on who her clients are, that they must be doing something for good.
Oh, okay.
And I'm sure she wouldn't mind my telling you that she's had some ups and downs this year, largely because earlier in the year she was quite poorly. She had to go into hospital for emergency surgery. She's fine, but in America that drums up massive bills that you have to pay. So she's had some financially scary moments, and I've been teaching her about abundance and scarcity. And she told me this really great story last night about a client who had changed their mind after having paid a deposit, quite a large deposit, that she was relying upon for her income this month, and they wanted it back.
Oh.
And so she said, what would Judith do? And she said, I I made the refund without scarcity, which would have been difficult for her in several months in 2014. But, typically what she'd come to the call to tell me about was immediately she'd received a call from an ideal client, someone who does something absolutely world-changing involving peace and reconciliation in the Middle East, who is absolutely her ideal client, who wants a website, she does something for good. And over and above that, because I'd heard of this person because they're so famous, but she'd also received a deposit of $500 on another website that was already in the pipeline. So the point of this story is that when she was brave enough to go first and release the funds without scarcity, two marvellous opportunities came in, a new opportunity and a big chunk of cash.
Oh, that's a great story.
It is a great story, isn't it? But I've been teaching, that's what I teach my clients, Nicola, and I have to go first as well. You have to be brave and release the funds with love, knowing that the right stuff will come in when you do that. And I see them do it, and it works all the time.
Wow, that's a great story. This week's episode was sponsored by Audio Jungle. To get some immediate atmosphere for your website or your recordings, go to ownitthepodcast.com/Audio Jungle. You've been listening to Nicola Cairncross and Judith Morgan. The podcast is called Own It, Your Business and Your Life. Do come and visit us at ownitthepodcast.com. We'd love to hear your feedback. You can find out more about Judith and visit her on her website at judithmorgan.com, and you can find Nicola at nicolacairncross.com.